It's 5 a.m. The alarm cuts through the silence like a blade. Outside it's still dark. The air is cold. Your bed is warm, perfectly warm, the kind of warmth that whispers stay. Just stay. You could hit snooze, you could roll over. No one would know. No one would blame you. But you don't. You throw the covers off. You feel the shock of cold air hit your skin. You stand up even though every cell in your body is screaming to lie back down. You lace up your shoes. You step outside into the freezing morning, and you run. Why? Why do some people do this? Why do they choose the hard path when the easy one is right there? Available, perfectly acceptable? Most people would call this discipline. Some might call it obsession. A few might even call it masochism. But if you're the person doing it, you know it's none of those things. It's something else entirely. It's a refusal. A deep, almost cellular refusal to let comfort become your master. We live in the most comfortable era in human history. We have temperature-controlled homes, food delivered to our door, entertainment at our fingertips. We've engineered an entire civilization designed to eliminate discomfort. And yet something strange is happening. Depression rates are climbing. Anxiety is epidemic. People report feeling empty, restless, unfulfilled, despite having more comfort than any generation before them. The paradox is brutal and undeniable. The more comfortable we become, the more miserable we seem to feel. And then there are the others, the people who wake up early, who lift heavy things for no reason other than to feel strong, who fast when they could eat, who have difficult conversations when they could stay silent, who start businesses when they could stay employed, who create art when they could consume it. These people aren't suffering from some pathological need for pain. They've simply recognized something the rest of the world is starting to forget. Comfort is not the same as fulfillment. Safety is not the same as strength. And the easy path, the one everyone says you should take, often leads absolutely nowhere worth going. This isn't new wisdom. Over a century ago, a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming. He looked at the society around him and predicted exactly what would happen if humanity continued prioritizing comfort above all else. He called it the arrival of the last man, the final human, the person who blinks, who wants nothing more than a little warmth, a little pleasure, a little safety. The person who has eliminated risk, challenge, and struggle from their life and wonders why everything feels so hollow. Nietzsche wasn't against comfort. He was against what comfort does to the human spirit when it's never challenged, never tested, never forced to grow. He understood that we don't build character in moments of ease. We build it in moments of resistance. And the people who reject comfort aren't broken. They're awake. So if you've ever felt that pull, that strange gravitational force toward the harder choice, toward the cold shower, the difficult project, the uncomfortable truth, you're not damaged. You're not punishing yourself. You're responding to something ancient and essential. Something your nervous system knows even if your culture has forgotten it. You're recognizing that the struggle isn't the obstacle. The struggle is the point. Friedrich Nietzsche was not a comfortable man. He spent much of his life sick, isolated, misunderstood, and in pain. He wasn't an athlete. He wasn't a warrior. He was a philosopher who could barely see, who suffered from migraines so severe he could barely function, and who eventually lost his mind entirely. And yet this man, from that position of suffering, wrote some of the most powerful ideas about human strength ever conceived. One of his most famous lines is also one of his most misunderstood. "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." People throw that phrase around like it's motivational wallpaper. But Nietzsche wasn't talking about surviving random hardship. He was talking about something far more radical. He was talking about choosing hardship, seeking it, using it as the raw material for transformation. Nietzsche believed that suffering wasn't something to avoid. It was something to engage with, not because suffering is good in itself, but because the process of overcoming suffering is what creates depth, character, and meaning. He looked at humanity and saw two paths. One path led to comfort, safety, predictability, and slow spiritual death. The other led to challenge, risk, growth, and the possibility of becoming something greater than you are. He called the person who walks the second path the Übermensch, the overman, The individual who doesn't just survive life, but creates themselves through it. This isn't about being superhuman, it's about being fully human. It's about refusing to settle for a life of passive consumption and instead choosing a life of active creation. And creation, real creation, always requires struggle. There's another concept Nietzsche gave us, one that might be even more important. Amor fati, love of fate. It means embracing everything that happens to you, not just the good parts, not just tolerating the hard parts, but loving them because they're part of your story, part of what makes you who you are. When you adopt amor fati, you stop resisting reality. You stop wishing things were easier. You start asking a different question. How can I use this? This is where people who reject comfort live psychologically. They're not looking for pain. They're looking for growth. And they've realized that growth only happens at the edge of your capacity. If you're always comfortable, you're always stagnant. Your muscles don't grow unless they're stressed. Your mind doesn't sharpen unless it's challenged. Your character doesn't deepen unless it's tested. Think about the people you admire most, the ones whose lives actually mean something. Are they the ones who played it safe? Who avoided risk? Who chose the easy road at every turn? Or are they the ones who did hard things? Who faced fears? Who built something from nothing? Who stood up when it would have been easier to sit down? Nietzsche saw this pattern everywhere. The great artists suffered for their work. The great thinkers wrestled with impossible questions. The great leaders faced opposition and doubt. None of them had easy lives, but all of them had meaningful ones. And meaning, Nietzsche understood, is worth more than comfort could ever be. Here's what most people miss. Nietzsche wasn't saying you should seek suffering for its own sake. He wasn't promoting self-destruction or unnecessary pain. He was saying that when you have a purpose, a reason, a vision for who you want to become, then discomfort becomes a tool. The cold morning run isn't punishment, it's training. The difficult conversation isn't torture, it's growth. The risky decision isn't reckless, it's necessary. Nietzsche believed that the worst thing you could do is live a life so safe, so padded, so free from challenge that you never discover what you're capable of. Because capability isn't a given, it's forged. And it's only forged under pressure. So when you choose the hard thing, you're not being irrational. You're not ignoring the easy option out of stubbornness. You're practicing a philosophy that's older and deeper than modern comfort culture. You're saying that your life isn't about minimizing discomfort. It's about maximizing meaning. And meaning only comes from struggle overcome, from resistance met, from the part of you that grows in the fire. Nietzsche was a philosopher, not a scientist. But modern neuroscience has caught up to his ideas in remarkable ways. It turns out that your brain doesn't actually want comfort, at least not in the way we think. What your brain wants is growth, challenge, adaptation. And the mechanism it uses to grow is something called hormesis. Hormesis is the scientific term for beneficial stress. It's the principle that small amounts of stress, applied intentionally, make you stronger. When you lift weights, you're creating micro-tears in your muscle fibers. Your body responds by rebuilding them thicker and stronger. When you fast, you stress your metabolic system. Your body responds by becoming more efficient at using energy. When you expose yourself to cold, your body learns to regulate temperature better, produce more mitochondria, and increase resilience. This isn't philosophy. This is measurable biology. Your body is anti-fragile, a term popularized by Nassim Taleb. It doesn't just resist stress. It gets better because of stress, but only if the stress is voluntary, manageable, and followed by recovery. This is the difference between productive discomfort and destructive suffering. Let's talk about dopamine. Your brain releases dopamine when you accomplish something difficult. Not when something is handed to you. Not when you take the easy path. When you earn it. Dopamine is your brain's way of saying, "That mattered. That was worth the effort. Do that again." When everything is easy, dopamine flatlines. You scroll endlessly through content that requires no effort and feel nothing. You eat food that required no preparation and forget it immediately. You consume entertainment that demands no attention and finish feeling empty. But when you do something hard, when you resist the urge to quit, when you finish the workout or the project or the conversation you didn't want to have, your brain lights up. You feel alive. And that feeling, that sense of earned reward, is what creates sustainable motivation. People who reject comfort aren't disciplined because they hate themselves. They're disciplined because they've learned that the feeling after doing the hard thing is better than the feeling of avoiding it. There's also something happening at the identity level. Psychologists talk about self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle challenges. Every time you choose discomfort and survive it, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You update your internal narrative. You're no longer the person who avoids hard things. You're the person who does them. And that shift in identity changes everything. This is why people who train hard, who build businesses, who create art, often report feeling more confident in completely unrelated areas of their lives. Because confidence isn't domain-specific. It's the result of repeated evidence that you can do difficult things. When you know you can wake up at 5 a.m. and run in the cold, you also know you can have the difficult conversation. When you know you can push through the last rep, you also know you can push through the hard decision. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Research shows that people with high tolerance for discomfort have lower rates of anxiety and depression. Why? Because anxiety is often the fear of discomfort. It's the fear that something will be hard, painful, or uncertain. But if you've trained yourself to handle discomfort, to even seek it out, then anxiety loses its grip. The thing you're afraid of is just another challenge. And you've already proven you can handle challenges. People who reject comfort are also better at delayed gratification. They can wait. They can endure short-term pain for long-term gain. And every study on success, from the famous marshmallow test onward, shows that delayed gratification is one of the strongest predictors of achievement, health, and life satisfaction. So when you see someone doing something hard by choice, don't assume they're punishing themselves. Assume they understand something about how the brain works. They understand that comfort feels good in the moment but leaves you weaker over time. Discomfort feels hard in the moment but leaves you stronger, sharper, more capable, and more confident. Your nervous system is designed to adapt. But it only adapts to what you expose it to. If you expose it only to comfort, it adapts to fragility. If you expose it to challenge, it adapts to strength. Nietzsche called it the will to power. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity. But the principle is the same. You become what you practice. And people who reject comfort are practicing becoming stronger. Not everyone who rejects comfort is doing it for the same reasons. And not everyone who does it is doing it in a healthy way. Let's be honest about both. There are different psychological profiles among people who choose the hard path. First, there's the performance seeker. Athletes, competitors, people driven by measurable results. For them, discomfort is a tool. They're not interested in suffering. They're interested in winning, in getting better, in reaching the next level. Their relationship with discomfort is transactional. It's the price of excellence. Then there's the meaning seeker. Artists, entrepreneurs, creators, people who need their life to matter. They don't reject comfort because they want to win. They reject it because comfort feels like death. They'd rather struggle toward something meaningful than coast toward nothing. Their discomfort is existential. It's the fuel for purpose. Then there's the ascetic, the person who strips away excess. Minimalists, monks, people who practice voluntary simplicity. They reject comfort because they've seen through it. They know that more stuff, more convenience, more ease doesn't lead to more happiness. So they simplify, they fast, they own less, they create space. Their discomfort is philosophical. And finally, there's the warrior. Military, first responders, people who train for crisis. They reject comfort because they know that when things go wrong, soft people break. They need to know they can handle pressure, pain, and chaos. Their discomfort is preparation. All of these are valid, all of these can be healthy. But there's a shadow side to all of them. And this is where we need to be brutally honest. Because sometimes rejecting comfort isn't about growth. It's about punishment. Sometimes it's not discipline. It's self-harm dressed up in philosophy. Sometimes the person who won't rest, who won't accept help, who won't ever let themselves be comfortable isn't strong. They're running. Here's the difference. Healthy discomfort has a purpose. It's building towards something. Unhealthy discomfort is avoiding something. If you're waking up at 5 a.m. to train because you're building strength, that's growth. If you're waking up at 5 a.m. to train because you hate yourself when you don't, that's punishment. If you're fasting because you're exploring discipline and clarity, that's intentional. If you're fasting because you feel guilty every time you eat, that's disordered. Nietzsche himself struggled with this line. He rejected comfort, yes, but he also suffered deeply. He was isolated. He was sick. He eventually collapsed into madness. His philosophy was brilliant, but his life was painful. And that's the warning. You can take the philosophy too far. You can turn voluntary discomfort into a prison. The key is asking yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because it makes me better? Or because I believe I deserve to suffer? Am I doing this because I have a goal? Or because I can't tolerate feeling good? Am I growing? Or am I just grinding myself down? There's also the trap of identity. Some people become so attached to being the person who does hard things that they can't ever stop. They can't rest. They can't celebrate. They can't accept ease even when it's appropriate. Their identity becomes dependent on struggle, and that's exhausting. It's also unsustainable. Real strength isn't about suffering 24/7. It's about knowing when to push and when to rest. It's about choosing discomfort when it serves you and choosing comfort when you need to recover. Athletes understand this. They train hard, but they also sleep. They push their bodies, but they also let them heal. The people who burn out are the ones who never stop pushing. So here's the nuance that matters. Rejecting comfort is powerful when it's intentional, purposeful, and balanced. It becomes destructive when it's compulsive, shame-driven, or relentless. The goal isn't to live in constant pain. The goal is to not be controlled by the avoidance of pain. There's a massive difference. If you recognize yourself in the healthy versions of this, good. Keep going. But if you recognize yourself in the shadow versions, if you can't remember the last time you let yourself rest, if you feel guilty every time you're not struggling, then it's time to ask harder questions. Because Nietzsche's philosophy was about becoming more human, not less. It was about strength, yes, but also about joy, creation, and love of life. If your rejection of comfort has stolen your ability to experience any of those things, then you're not following Nietzsche. You're just suffering. And suffering without purpose is just pain. So where does this leave us? If comfort isn't the answer, but constant suffering isn't either, then what is? The answer is simpler than you think. It's about choosing meaning over ease. It's about recognizing that a life worth living isn't a life free from challenge. It's a life where the challenges matter. Nietzsche had a line that cuts to the core of this. He who has a why can bear almost any how. When you have a reason, a purpose, a vision for who you want to become, then discomfort stops being something to avoid. It becomes something to use. The cold morning isn't torture. It's training for the person you're trying to build. The difficult conversation isn't suffering. It's the cost of living honestly. The risk isn't reckless, it's necessary. This is what separates people who reject comfort from people who are just miserable. People who reject comfort have a why. They know what they're building. They know why it matters. And that knowledge transforms everything. The same action that would be unbearable without meaning becomes almost effortless with it. Think about parents. They wake up in the middle of the night. They sacrifice sleep, money, freedom. They endure exhaustion that would break someone without a reason. But they do it willingly because the why is clear. The child matters more than the comfort. That's the power of purpose. So if you want to apply this philosophy without becoming extreme, start with your why. What do you actually want? Not what you think you should want. Not what other people want for you. What do you want? Who do you want to become? What kind of life would make you look back with no regrets? Once you have that clarity, then discomfort becomes a tool. You're not rejecting comfort out of principle. You're choosing challenge because it moves you toward something that matters. Maybe that's physical strength. Maybe it's creative work. Maybe it's building a business. Maybe it's becoming the kind of person who can handle crisis, who stays calm under pressure, who shows up when things are hard. Here's the practical part. You don't need to climb Everest. You don't need to run ultramarathons or live in a monastery. You just need to regularly do things that are slightly harder than comfortable. Take cold showers. Have the conversations you've been avoiding. Start the project you've been putting off. Say no to the things that drain you, even if it's awkward. Sit with boredom instead of reaching for your phone. Small, intentional discomforts compound. They teach your nervous system that hard things are survivable. They build confidence, they update your identity. Over time, you stop being someone who avoids challenge. You become someone who meets it. But here's the balance. Rest is not weakness. Recovery is not failure. Even Nietzsche, for all his talk of strength, understood that life needed joy, beauty, and celebration. He wasn't promoting a gray, joyless existence of constant grinding. He was promoting a life fully lived. And a life fully lived includes both struggle and rest, both effort and ease. The people who do this well understand cycles. They push hard, then recover. They train intensely, then sleep deeply. They create with focus, then rest with presence. The mistake isn't experiencing comfort. The mistake is making comfort your entire life. So if you felt that pull toward the harder path, trust it. You're not broken. You're not confused. You're responding to something real. You're recognizing that ease doesn't build anything. Comfort doesn't create meaning. Safety doesn't make you strong. And the life you actually want, the one you'll be proud of, isn't going to be found by avoiding hard things. It's going to be built through them. Nietzsche spent his life in pain, but he also wrote, "I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things." That's the shift. Not avoiding the necessary, not resenting it. Seeing it as beautiful. Seeing struggle as the sculptor that shapes you. You're not rejecting comfort because you hate yourself. You're rejecting it because you love the person you're becoming more than the person you'd stay if you chose ease. And in the end, that's not masochism. That's not dysfunction. That's wisdom. Because the easy path leads nowhere worth going. But the hard path, the one that demands everything from you, that's the one that leads somewhere real. So go ahead. Choose the hard thing. Wake up early. Have the conversation. Start the project. Take the risk. Not because you have to, because you want to become someone who can. And if you made it this far, if any of this resonated, drop a comment. Let me know what hard thing you're choosing. And if you want more conversations about the psychology behind what makes us human, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started.